You to be kind enough to introduce yourselves and say the name of your newspaper. So a brief summary. Thank you for waiting. We were a little late in the proceedings, but this is the sign of very intense debate, very much involving the participation of those present. I say this with great conviction that we are particularly satisfied with the result of this meeting, which is one of the central moments in the path which the G20 has carried out to promote a debate and a concrete taking of responsibilities for gender parity and empowerment of women. You know that this is a unique event, first and foremost. And this is the first thing I'd like to share with you today, is that there was a very wide support and sharing by all the participants in saying that this was the first event, but it must not be the last at all. It must not be the last, that there is a need to give an impulse of strategy, defining a global agenda with clear, measurable objectives, where the international community, starting from a dialogue of G20, can and must commit itself, is a fundamental strategic result. The second element I wanted to share is the perspective through which we have tackled the topic of female empowerment, women's empowerment and gender parity, placing this at the center of a necessary agenda to restart our world economy. Also because of the devastating effects of COVID-19, which everyone recognized have highlighted inequalities, which unfortunately were already present in all our societies. And so today, the objective of achieving a full gender parity, something which is not limited to just part of the women's population, but becomes strategic to design a possibility of sustainable and inclusive development feasible for all. It's not just a topic of rights, but of opportunities for a community which wishes to be more human, more capable of recognizing the dignity of people, placing all people in a condition to be able to exercise through their own freedom a responsibility of solidarity, also in the human relations we have in our communities. We need a global agenda because the strategies of individual countries cannot be enough. This is a point very much shared in today's debate, and we need an alliance between institutions and the world of civil society, companies, and all the organizations and international organisms. There are two main focuses today: the topic of education, obviously starting from the guarantee and the protection of the universal right to education for girls and boys, recognizing that from infancy, the first inequalities take root, and a major investment on the creation of new competences, these so-called STEM topics, subjects, and also digital and financial skills, which allow women to become prime movers in this field. There's a commitment of the international community in this direction. And in line with the commitments, the G20 has assumed. Okay, the translation will be interrupted.
Oggi si è ribadita la necessità di rimuovere quegli ostacoli che impediscono la piena partecipazione delle donne nel mondo del lavoro, la valorizzazione della presenza femminile, l'eliminazione di tutte quelle discriminazioni a partire dalle differenze salariali e anche dal non paritario accesso ai ruoli di leadership da parte delle donne. Per fare questo serve maggiore condivisione, ovviamente corresponsabilità da parte delle donne e degli uomini anche nell'ambito dei carichi di cura familiari, strumenti, infrastrutture sociali, infrastrutture educative a partire dalla prima infanzia. Ecco, a conclusione di questo mio breve riassunto, ovviamente invece arrivo ad un tema che è entrato nell'agenda di questa giornata, non previsto ma urgente e necessario, che è stato quello della questione dell'Afghanistan, delle donne, delle ragazze afghane, della necessità di un confronto che abbiamo portato avanti con gli altri ministri per le pari opportunità sulla condizione nella quale si trova adesso la popolazione afghana e in particolare le donne e le ragazze. Abbiamo ascoltato in particolare il messaggio che il Presidente Draghi ha voluto inviarci all'inizio di questa giornata. Siamo stati sollecitati a ragionare su una situazione che evidentemente vede un rischio enorme per le donne e per le ragazze afghane di vedersi private dei diritti e delle libertà fondamentali, di vedere arretrati questi diritti rispetto a passi che sono stati fatti avanti in questi anni, e ad una necessità, quindi una call to action da parte dei ministri delle pari opportunità dei paesi partecipanti a questa conferenza sull'empowerment femminile, di chiedere a tutta la comunità internazionale e in particolare ovviamente ai paesi del G20 per un'assunzione di responsabilità condivisa, per mettere in campo tutti gli strumenti che si hanno a disposizione per tutelare oggi i diritti primari delle donne e delle ragazze e di tutta la popolazione afghana, di prevenire qualsiasi forma di violenza.
To prevent any kinds of violence exercised vis-à-vis women, and to define instruments which allow Afghan women and girls to keep their rights and to play a role in society and not to be discriminated against and to have a role of dependency vis-à-vis their male partners. And so this confirms the need for a strategy which can be truly shared at an international level, starting from the movement of the G20. Let's start with questions. Simonetta Guidotti, TG2, and Il Corriere della Sera comes next. I can't hear the question because the question is not asked with a mic. There are a series of proposals for Afghanistan. How do you believe these proposals can be put into practice? It's nice to have theory, but in practice, in such a difficult moment, is far more complicated. First and foremost, well, thank you for your question. Today was marked by a very practical approach. Today, what we shared, and I think that this was a result which must not be overlooked because of its importance. Today was, we had a full sharing by all the countries who participated in this meeting with an extremely constructive and proposition-based attitude, was that the protection of the dignity and the human rights of Afghan women and girls is a premise for anything we wish to do internationally, that all tools and instruments must be used and that a strategy must be defined at an international level. This is a very strong request for commitment, and this is the first voice which is formulated in this direction within the framework of the G20. And it responds to the request which the Italian government voiced in its role as the presidency of the G20, and which President Draghi repeated today. The G20 has a responsibility vis-à-vis the protection of the rights of citizens, both men and women. Today, we need a more wide-ranging vision and only a shared strategy within a forum which, because of its global nature, is the ideal forum to have this shared responsibility, must, however, take on a practical approach within the framework of a debate which will allow us to follow this situation which is evolving in Afghanistan. Rosa Spina from Corriere della Sera. Turning to the result of this day of work, there are countries which participate, which have a situation of women which differs greatly. Have you found some practical measures, one or more, which are valid for all? Thank you. Well, I'd like to start off by sharing the fact that everyone, all the different countries, shared the need to promote full parity of gender and equal opportunities, truly recognizing in this objective not a theoretical goal, but a concrete, practical way of defending and protecting women, and of creating a society capable of starting off again in a more effective way. I believe that the experience of the pandemic has indeed involved our consciences and a political commitment in a context of diversity and of leadership of women and men in our societies. It's only in this way that we can really chart a course for recovery in a more efficient and concrete way. Above all, the topic of education, which very much shared, the need to introduce paths from early childhood. And I wish to state the fact that there are countries where for the situation of children in accessing to education and allows us to overcome any kind of stereotypes from infancy. Requalification of female consequences, the need not to exclude any woman from innovation processes, not because all women must participate, but because without female governance in these processes, these will be designed in a non-integrated way. The strong message which comes from the G20 is that all the major issues of sustainability, ecological transition, the topic of climate change, energy transition, these new global challenges, either they are tackled with a viewpoint of gender parity or they cannot be tackled with an integrated approach. The other aspect is a shared approach in terms of monitoring, the need to meet year after year within the framework of the G20, introducing as a transversal debate the topic of gender parity means finding measurable and quantifiable objectives which define the progress of the development experience of these topics. Gender parity is an objective which has not been reached in any part of the world. There is no country in the world which can say that it has fully reached its objective. But we have focused on the idea that we've got to all follow this path together and try to do it together. Emma Giovannini, Rai News. Minister, how will you manage to make the conclusions of this day binding vis-à-vis the G20 of October? First of all, there was a commitment by the political authorities present. Today, what is binding in politics is often the assuming of responsibility. Here, there was an evident adoption of responsibility, a strong adoption of responsibility, in an atmosphere of great cooperation and of emotion, too. Allow me to say this. We have the impression that this appointment has been a milestone. I am grateful and proud that the Italian government has wanted to promote this, and I am certain that the evidence of the importance of the proposals which are a consequence of this will also lead to consequences in terms of our leaders. And so the fact of having this gender parity meeting, well, the next presidency, Indonesia, has stated that it wishes to follow along this path. DSK News, Alessandro Fossati. No, so at this point, let us conclude. Thank you very much for your work and for having followed us. Thank you.